Our story. Part 11, Too Much About Jesus. Now that we had a building in downtown Salt Lake City and Sunday morning services had begun, it was time for me to learn how to minister to people, and I had a lot to learn. I remember driving to do my very first funeral. As we were on the way, I looked over at Allison and asked, "Have you ever been to a funeral?" She looked at me and laughed. Then she said, "You have never even been to a funeral? How are you going to lead one?" That was a fair question. I did not really know. All I knew was that I was going to show up, cry with them, talk about Jesus, hug them, and miss their loved one with them. That was about all I had. And in many ways, that is how we did ministry in those early days. I did not always know what I was doing, but I knew there was a God who knew exactly what he was doing, and I was learning to trust him. As we were learning the landscape of Salt Lake City, I also began reaching out to other pastors in the area. There were not a lot of churches like ours, but there were some men who had been serving there for a while, and I wanted to introduce myself. I hoped we could have some fellowship. I met with one pastor who had been in Salt Lake for some time. Later, he would become a very good friend, but that first lunch was a little awkward. He was polite, but I could tell he was cautious. I was the young guy coming into town to start a church. He was more established, more polished, and probably wondering what kind of trouble had just arrived from California. We sat across the table from each other, and I started telling him what we were doing, but I could feel the tension. So finally, I said, "Can I tell you the honest truth?" He looked at me. I said, "I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I'm just trying to follow Jesus." For a moment, I did not know how he was going to take that. Then he leaned back, looked at me, smiled, and said, "I don't know what I'm doing either." I said, "Now we can talk." And from there, a friendship began. That moment meant a lot to me. I was not trying to run the church by the seat of my pants. I did not want to do ministry poorly. I really wanted to follow Jesus. I wanted to learn. I wanted to listen. I wanted to do what God was calling us to do. But I also knew we were still figuring it out as we went. In those early days, I did not have a worship leader, so I led worship. I did not have someone to do announcements, so I did the announcements. I did not have another person preaching, so I preached. For a while, I did just about everything. That was not healthy long term, and it was never meant to stay that way. But it also was never truly a one-man show. God always surrounded me with people who helped, supported, prayed, served, and stepped in where they were needed. There was one gal in the church who could sing well, and I could not sing very well at all. So when I was leading worship, I would tell her, "Sing loud because I am going to follow you." And she did. God kept bringing the right people at the right time. Again, we were just a bunch of misfits trying to follow Jesus together. We did a lot of things wrong, but we also did some things right. One of the things we did right was stay simple. Pastor Chuck Smith had taught us to stay in the Word, teach the Bible verse by verse, line by line, chapter by chapter, keep pointing people to Jesus. So that is what we tried to do. We worshiped. We opened the Bible. We loved people. We prayed. We made mistakes. Then we came back the next week and tried again. At one point, a family left the church. Whenever someone left, I usually tried to ask why, not to argue with them, but to see if there was something we needed to pay attention to or something we needed to do better. So I asked why they were leaving. The answer surprised me. She said, "You talk too much about Jesus." I did not know how to respond to that. What else did I have to give them? The Apostle Paul said he did not come with excellence of speech, but with one message, Jesus Christ and him crucified. That was the message. I told jokes. I told stories. I probably talked too long more than once. But underneath all of it, the message was always Jesus. From Genesis to Revelation, it was Jesus. We were only in that community center for about a year, maybe a year and a half. It was not very long before we outgrew it. But during that season, We tried to stay consistent in worship, consistent in teaching through the Word of God, consistent in loving one another, consistent in trying to make the church a safe place for people to grow. I still had a lot to learn. I still made a lot of mistakes. But God was patient. And as we went along, I began to live something I had said many times: find some friends and grow old together. That is what we were doing. We were not just building services. We were becoming family. And at the center of that family, we had one message: Jesus. If that was too much Jesus, then I did not know how to offer anything less.